The Democrats going at what they call this Trump power grab to effectively rewrite or change the rules midstream to try to steal election seats in the coming midterms. Experts warning that Trump, who's tried to, of course, overthrow the election that he lost in 2020, is starting earlier with more sophisticated coordination to rig the coming midterms, at least in the states where he can exert powers. Now, today, California Democrats are showing that they will not take this sitting down or just talk about breaking precedent or criticism or op-eds. They're actually fighting fire with fire, countering the news out of Texas and what Republicans did yesterday to fight back. And Democrats say that the way the Republicans have sort of watered down or distorted those districts in Texas are fundamentally race-baiting, unfair ways to reshape who goes to Congress. Here's the moment that the first of three key election bills just passed with these Democrats fighting fire with fire in California. The key votes will set up a mechanism to redraw California maps. Earlier, before this vote, the governor said it's on Texas.
This is radical rigging of a midterm election, radical rigging of an election, destroying, vandalizing this democracy, the rule of law. So I'm sorry. I know some people's sensibilities. I respect and appreciate that. But right now, with all due respect, we're walking down a damn different path. We're fighting fire with fire, and we're going to punch these sons of bitches in the mouth.
There you hear it. It is a tough and aggressive stance from someone who is seen as a possible Democrat to run in the next presidential election. Meanwhile, the Democrats' most popular living former president, Barack Obama, is backing this move. That's striking because Obama is known for moderation, for worrying about the kind of ways that outdoing Trump can set off a constitutional hardball. He says this is not his preference, but we cannot unilaterally allow one of the two major parties to rig the game. Now, Republicans in the Texas Senate will be passing their new map. That's expected tonight. And Trump is continuing on. Today, he talked about trying to build some sort of artificial 100-seat majority. And one Republican in Texas basically saying the quiet part out loud.
The underlying goal of this plan is straightforward: improve Republican political performance.
That is a confession, an admission, indeed, in places where the courts and judges oversee these kind of changes, which can happen. You can sue to have judges look it over. That's exactly the kind of evidence that cuts against Republicans. Although others will say that both parties, with the California punching back, are admitting that this is now the new normal, or at least the normal in some of these states, where there's no pretense of drawing fair maps, just political hardball to distort the results. Republicans say they know it, they're going to barrel on. Some Democrats saying if this is what it takes, they will fight back with equal measure. I want to bring in our guests tonight who know a lot about these issues. Christina Greer is a political science professor from Fordham, and California Assemblymember Buffy Wicks, a Democrat who co-authored the state's redistricting legislation. Welcome to you both. Professor Greer, what do you think of the way Democrats are fighting back, and what is a shift from Barack Obama, who years back exactly opposed these kind of things, saying, where does it end?
Right. Well, it seems as though Gavin Newsom's been able to do something that many Democrats haven't been able to do, which is get Barack Obama off of the sidelines and into the fight. I think there's a real tension in the Democratic Party right now because some people don't want Democrats to stoop down to the Republican levels. You remember Michelle Obama famously said, you know, when they go low, we go high. But there are a vast majority of Democrats who are very frustrated. They feel like we're bringing staplers to a gunfight, and we're not fighting fire with fire, as Gavin Newsom has said. And so I think some people welcome this type of aggression that many Democrats have not necessarily had these past few months, especially, and seeing how Donald Trump and the Republican Party and his sycophants are moving so quickly to strip so many states from their rights and freedoms, I think many Democrats can welcome this aggression.
Buffy, tell us what you and your party are doing in California. And if you would share with us, because people are watching this, stay closely in your own words, why this is different than Democrats' approach there in the past.
Sure. I think we view this as really as a blatant power grab designed to rig the election. And I think, as Governor Newsom said it best, we have to fight fire with fire. And that's exactly what we're going to do here in California. We're not going to let Donald Trump dismantle our democracy. And we really view that that is what is at stake here in terms of what he's trying to do and what he's doing in Texas. I will also note, though, that our plan is by far the most transparent in the nation. We voted today to go to the ballot to let voters see the maps. The voters will ultimately decide if they want these maps. And we also will revert back to the independent commission in 2030. But we're not going to sit by on the sidelines while Trump tries to rig the system. So I think we've put forth the most eloquent solution given the situation that we're in. And let me be clear, none of us wanted to be in this situation. I support the independent commission. So do so many of my colleagues. But what you saw on the floor of the assembly today and overwhelming support to send these maps to the voters and let the voters decide if this is what they want to do. And so in that sense, I think it's very transparent. It's very democratic, unlike what happened in Texas.
Yeah. Here's one Texas lawmaker. Let's take a listen.
Well, the Governor Hochul in New York, I spoke with her just yesterday, and she is ready to take action if necessary. Again, this is all triggered. Not one of these Democratic governors was looking to do any mid-decade redistricting. And so then we're looking for, if we have to, New York is willing, Illinois is willing. We're talking to Maryland. We're talking to New Jersey. We're going to continue to talk to these states to try to meet them where they are, which is in the dirt.
So, Buffy, I guess one way to build on both what she's saying there and your answer is, what would success look like? Does it look like thwarting or evening up any Republican effort to do this, to change the game midstream so that the next midterms are break even? But ultimately, if you didn't have this kind of rigging coming out of the Trump White House in the future, you just mentioned, you would be open to going back to what had been, I think, what a lot of Democrats wanted, which was a nonpartisan anti-gerrymandering position.
Yeah, I mean, we've had the gold standard here in California. We voted on this constitutional amendment in 2010 to create an independent commission, which we all support. But that was 2010. This is a different era in terms of what we are in. And we really view this as an emergency. We view Donald Trump as a threat to our democracy. And we want to give the voters the power to vote in these new congressional maps if that is what they want. Again, to revert back to the independent redistricting commission in 2030. But listen, we view it really as an emergency. And if you look at what Donald Trump has done to our state, how he has targeted California as a blue state, what he's doing with these ICE agents, these thugs coming into our communities, how he wants to withhold, wildfire resources for our communities whose homes have burned to the ground, threatening to take away health care, SNAP, food stamps, all of the things, and for other blue states, this is what's coming your way. And this is what he's intended to do. And we view what he is doing in Texas as his chance to grasp onto more power in a very unfair way. He does not play by the rules. And that is why I think it's important for us to act. And you saw overwhelming support amongst Democrats in the legislature today to do exactly just that, to empower our voters to act in November with a special election to vote on new maps.
So, Professor Greer, are we entering what sounds like the beginning of a new phase of Democratic response? There's grassroots resistance. The No Kings protests were huge. In some measurable ways, the ongoing protests of the second Trump term are actually broader, wider than the first term, even as the elites, we've seen it in colleges, companies, media, parent companies giving in, while the grassroots is stronger. And now we're seeing elected Democrats basically say they can speak in the same language, the only language perhaps that Trump understands.
Right. I mean, I think it's been very clear that the Democratic voters want a lot more aggression than many Democrat elites have shown. And I think it's, as was said, these are very trying times. I mean, the president is a political arsonist. He lights fires and then he comes and sort of tells everyone that he's put them out, even though he is the one who's made the destruction. We remember during his first term, he wanted to find these 11,000 plus votes, and we still had some Republicans who, held the breach. We don't really have those Republicans nowadays, and they recognize that many of their policies are wildly unpopular, whether it's LGBTQ plus issues, whether it's IVF and, abortion rights for women, whether it's the environment or jobs. The list goes on and on. So the only way that Republicans will have some success in 2026 is to make sure they disenfranchise as many people and actually gerrymander folks out of districts. So as frustrating as it may be for people who wanted and still want, politics the way we have had them and the way we were progressing as a nation in a small d democratic way. As a professor, I've taught intro to politics for well over a decade, and we're not in that moment. And I think we have to be realistic about just how fragile we are. So many norms have been broken. So many things that we thought were laws do not actually exist. And we are sort of meeting George Washington's biggest concern that he talked about in his farewell address in the second term of Donald Trump, and having people abdicate to him, having Congress give away their power, having the courts essentially say, Donald Trump, whatever you'd like, we'll make sure happens. So this is a new era. I think it will make some Democrats somewhat uncomfortable to see this type of forceful language and action. But if it is what saves this nation from falling off of a cliff and into, fascism, I think that, it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's one that must be had before 2026 to make sure that we actually do have midterm elections and actually can get people back into Washington, D.C. to make some decisions on behalf of the American people.